Welcome to the Frictionless Innkeeper Podcast. Coming right up, fresh tips and insights from lodging professionals aimed at helping you improve your business. Our podcast is brought to you by the Frictionless Guest App, the digital concierge that helps your guests to live like locals. Learn how at frictionlessguest.com. Steve Short, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing well, Matt. And you?
I'm doing very well. We just did an interview with Craig Steele, the president and CEO of Samson Shower Systems. I don't think we've ever had anybody in a showerhead plumbing product arena before, and he has a pretty cool backstory and I think a pretty interesting product.
Yeah, I love doing these niche podcast interviews because, at first you think, oh, showerhead, and you get into all these details. Maybe it's just my detail-oriented nature and my love of asking questions and curiosity about things, but really cool. I mean, just packed with a lot of cool stuff. And his story is awesome. He's a kind of an independent guy, just like our independent innkeepers and lodging people. So that story is really cool to listen to. He's also didn't come up until afterwards, but I happened to ask, by the way, where are your shower heads made? Made in the USA. Like his manufacturer's like 5 or 10 miles away. So the whole local thing I love and fits in with our perspective and our approach on things. And I think it's just a really cool story. And I think that he's got something that's really valuable. I love to see it take off, and hopefully our listeners will listen and say, oh yeah, this is cool. And this really makes money sense as well, aside from the preservation of the need to preserve water, right?
Yeah, totally. And something that really struck out to me was he was formerly an aerospace engineer. So he's brought that kind of mindset for developing technology to really cut down on water usage and ultimately save money for innkeepers. And that's independent lodging. That's a big deal for anybody, but especially our sector.
I didn't think to say that it's not rocket science, but it's made by a rocket scientist, right?
Made by a rocket scientist. Next time we talk to Craig, we have to tell him that's his new tagline. Yeah.
That's right. All right.
Awesome. Well, I hope everybody enjoys this Frictionless Innkeeper podcast interview with Craig Steele. He's the president and CEO of Samson Shower Systems, which offers money and water savings, high pressure, low flow shower heads for the independent lodging sector. And Craig, thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Steve Short, my friend, how are you?
Matt, I'm fine as usual. Craig, thanks a lot for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is awesome. Craig, let's actually kick it off because in our pre-discussion here before we hit the record button, I think you have a pretty interesting backstory when it comes to Samson Shower Systems, and we would love to hear that.
Yes, sir. Well, my background is aerospace engineering. I'm an aerospace engineer by trade and by schooling. And so as such, I come up from private pilot land, piloting aircraft, a private pilot myself. Actually, a lot of that was spurred from when I was a child. My grandpa, his name was Sam, or actually Samuel, but everybody in the city knew him as Sam. So he spurred me into just loving airplanes, and that's what I did. And so I've been doing aerospace engineering for quite some time, and started a company in 2012 doing consulting for aerospace clients. And I was at this client a few years back, about 3 or 4 years ago now, and my schedule is very, very tight in the morning. So I have it down to the minute, like every engineer does, right? So as I'm getting ready in the morning, I'm taking a shower, and the water comes out of the wall and just falls to the ground. There's no pressure. They have soft water. My normal 10-minute shower is now taking 20, 25 minutes to get clean. I was very, very late to the client meeting. The client was not happy. Fortunately, they understood the situation. They gave me a second chance. I ended up winning the client, which is positive. But at the same time, I stopped by the hardware store on the way back, grabbed myself a set of pliers, walked into that hotel room, didn't damage it, but took their shower head off and said, man, what is going on here? And looked down inside there, and I saw this restrictor plate that was all slimed over with some mold and some algae, and realized that was what I was washing myself off with that morning, and saw everything was clogged up. And I just stopped, and I couldn't believe I'm sitting here in the bathroom with this thing. I'm looking at it going, man, I'm an aerospace engineer. I should be able to build something better than this. And so lo and behold, put my mind to it, and off we went. We started a company. have a patent pending on this shower that we designed. It's a low flow and high pressure. My goal was, hey, you should not have to compromise on saving water and having a really good shower at the same time. And so that's everything that I thought about when I was going through the design process. And so we went through the design process, patent pending on the design. Full patent is taking a little bit with COVID. That's taken a while. And I was thinking, how do I start? What do I want to name my company? Because I have another company and it's all about Craig. But this one here, what inspired me was my grandpa. He was an entrepreneur. He was really, really focused on helping others. And again, his name was Samuel. Everybody in the city knew him as Sam. And I said, what a better way to pay tribute to the person that kind of helped me develop who I am today than to name my company Sam and his grandson. So that's how Samson came about. And just so happens that I was able to tell my grandma, who's now 101, still with us, she was tickled pink that I named my company after my grandpa.
That's pretty cool. And Samson's a powerful name, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I did. That just happened to be that way. Yeah. I named it and it got a powerful, strong shower.
Steve, I can't believe you're not mentioning the Grateful Dead song Samson and Delilah, but we'll sidebar that one later. Yeah.
Well, technically, Matt, that wasn't written by the Grateful Dead. That's an old blues type song. If you get the CD, well, now there's not a whole lot of CDs, but if you look up the album, The Music Never Stopped, I think, actually, and it's all of the original versions of a lot of the songs that the Dead covered, and there's an old version of Samson and Delilah on there.
Oh my God, I had no idea. That's so cool. I really like that song. I've always loved that song, and I had no idea it was a cover. Sorry.
Yeah,
very interesting.
It's pretty cool.
I've totally sidetracked this. Continue.
That's all right. So just out of curiosity, the fact that your experience happened in a hotel, does that tie into, like, when you came up with the concept, did you say, all right, I'm going to build this thing? Because it sounds like anybody could use a shower head, and people prefer, they want to use less water. Everybody's, conscious of the environment, all those things. But were you thinking when you came up with the idea and decided to actually market it, that, okay, my best shot is probably to convince, the lodging industry that this thing's, something they need?
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking where the best bang for the buck was. And I mean, not bang for my buck, it's bang for a user's buck, and how we could save resources as much as possible and where you could capitalize on that. Of course, the big hotel, 250, 300 hotel rooms, multiple guests per night, that you're going to get a huge amount of water saving very, very quickly. There's impediments, there's great barriers to entry into those areas and the hotel areas. So I launched initially a digital marketing campaign, and it was targeting everybody, all users, retail, wholesale, B2B, B2C. And so that's really who we were focusing on. I really, at that point, didn't care who I sold it to. I just wanted to get our name out there, our product out there. And I knew it would save people water and prove itself.
And so, I mean, the reason why we have you on is because you were at a trade show and you were talking with Diane Turner, who, works with us with, she's responsible for the client side of things with our app, Frictionless Guest App. So I don't want to get too much into the marketing and the channels because it's not as relevant to our listeners, which is lodging professionals. But how long have you been kind of marketing to the lodging group and doing the trade shows? And what are you finding as far as the reception?
We started with an organization called Cabby first of last year in Northern California. Very, very small group of California bed and breakfast and boutiques. That was our first foray into it. The amount of reception that I received on our product was amazing. It was just awe-inspiring. And that at that point, I said, I need to pivot. There's a lot of interest here. A lot of people here and there's listening to the bed and breakfasts and the innkeepers, their stories. And they're always chasing revenues. They're really razor thin margins, and they're very, very seasonal. And I said, man, if I could help these guys, this would be a big benefit. And so that's kind of where I started going into like becoming a member of Cabby, ALP, and whatnot, and the other lodging associations, to be able to not only just to get my message out there to these people and attend those conferences. Since we've done that, that's been our heavy marketing this year, is basically just outreach. That's kind of how I see it. I don't see it as marketing. It's just me just yapping. at people, but we have had tremendous interest. I mean, phenomenal interest to the point where other vendors have come up at the same trade show and asked, what are you giving away? So what trinket do you have? I want that for my business. And I said, well, I'm selling a shower head. And they walk away scratching their heads like, well, why are you asking this question? And I said, we have never seen a vendor this busy before at any trade show. We've been telling it for years.
That's awesome.
And that's when I knew we had a good opportunity in front of us here.
So you're saying that when we're at ALP this year, that we should try to get our booth to sit next to yours, is what you're
I
saying.
think that's a good idea.
Unless they're in like an octagonal room. I've already had like 4 or 5 people say that exact same thing.
That's funny. So about the product itself, I remember having a tiny shower head that was kind of supposed to be the same thing, but I don't know why I wasn't that impressed with it or whatever. You could buy in the hardware store 20 years ago or whatever. So what's different about what you have? I'm sure there's other stuff out there. So if you want to talk about what's different, in general, but also more specifically, because I'm sure that if I own a property, I've probably thought about this and I've probably tried to put something in place. And I also am concerned that I don't want cheesiness, right? I want it, especially if I have an upscale place. I don't want something that looks ugly but is functional, I guess.
Correct.
So what considerations are there in terms of how the product works, how much it saves versus the conventional shower head versus what other options are out there, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so the main difference between our shower head and one of our other competitors, there's only very few competitors that are an all metal design that do what we do, that are low flow shower heads but high pressure. One thing we do is we boost the pressure. We're not like a boost pump in there, but through the engineering of the shower head itself, it actually increases the pressure of the water coming out. That's one thing that we do. We offer multiple spray patterns. So our spray pattern actually starts with a tighter spray pattern, opens up, and it's just an axial turn, opens up into our pulsating, and that's our patent pending, our pulsating spray pattern. And then it finally ends up into a gentle mist. When I first tried it out, it was very strong, very, very strong mist. And all the users appreciated the exfoliation for 20 minutes, but they said it was a little bit too much. So we had to dial it back a little bit. But in doing so, we actually were able to save even more water. So one of the things that's one of the big things that separates us is we have the 3 patterns, the 3 defined spray patterns, a patent pending pulsating spray pattern. The other thing that really separates us from a majority of the pack is the fact that we're an all metal design. Since we're such an all metal design, I use my aerospace engineering metals understanding, and I chose a aerospace grade aluminum, highly corrosion resistant, just the aluminum itself. And then through the design, we actually do something called an anodization. Most shower heads out there have a plating on it, and you've all seen that when you go and you pick off the calcium and the lime, and you're like, oh, they went from nice, beautiful chrome to gray. What in the world is it gray? Well, that's the underlying shower head itself. And when that happens and you just peel it, it just keeps coming off. And normally then that shower goes in the trash. Ours is a anodization. And what that does is that actually goes into the material about 3/10 of an inch, and then goes on top of the material about 3/10 of an inch. So it's an actual coating that's now integrated. It's chemically fused and chemically bonded to the raw material underneath. So there's no peeling off of the coating that we have on our parts. And that's very, very different from most of those chrome parts you see out there. I'm sure everybody has seen the plastic chrome parts and how easily they just peel off over time. So that's one of the other things. And so those 2 aspects, I think, are what kind of separate us from the pack. Our initial design is that EcoJet Stream. That's what's out there currently. We have a new design. I guess we'll share it out there. It's on the webpage, but it is called the Desert Willow. That is more of a tulip-shaped design. It's actually based on a plant, or I call it a flowering shrub here in Texas. It's known for extreme drought resistance, so it needs very little water to live. It's extremely hardy. It's very low maintenance. And it's called the life-giving bush because of the fact that it actually attracts pollinating insects like butterflies, bees, etc., hummingbirds, and it gives life to those. And so I said, what a perfect name for our new product. It looks very similar to the tulip and the flower on the bush itself, but it also is life giving because we're saving water and giving water back to the next generations. So that is going to be more of our upscale design. And we're actually working on with our manufacturers the ability to do custom engraving on there. So if sites like higher end hotels and places have a art or a logo that they would like to have on there, then they can go ahead and provide that. And we can get that engraved on the actual shower head. And now you have a custom shower head for your site and your property.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, pretty neat. And Matt is, just to let everybody know, Matt's pulled this up on the website so we can admire it. Looks pretty neat.
It's cool.
And it doesn't, yeah, and it's got, I guess you've taken more of the Steve Jobs approach of beautiful design here, as opposed to just looking functional, I guess, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's got to be functional. Is this kind of a sleeve that fits over the functional part of it somehow, or
no? That's the actual outer unit.
Okay.
I can't tell you what goes on inside. That's part of our patent, but it does have some common parts with the first design that we came out with. And so that's the positive news, especially from the manufacturing aspect. It does help keep some of the costs down, but then it still allows it to get the same performance and function that we expect to get out of the unit.
Okay. And I guess I want to talk about cost a little bit. So everybody listening has a feel for it. They can obviously go on to the website. But before we get into that, I guess it's always better to talk about value first, right? So obviously there's the water savings. I mean, there might be, that's the obvious thing, but there might be more from a cost perspective that you're saving. Because, I mean, I could be on, well, where I am right now, where my wife and I live, it's more rural. We're on a well, right? So that becomes a big thing. It's going to become more and more of a big thing, probably. So if you have problems with your well, that can be really expensive in the longer run. So I'm sure there's things like that. What are some of the considerations of why I want to, as a property owner, especially if I'm not paying for the water, if I'm not, paying for city water or whatever, and I'm conscious of the environment, but I'm more conscious of my pocketbook or my wallet or whatever. So what are some other things from a value perspective that would cause me to say, I'm willing to pay more for this shower head than just, the average one?
That's a good topic. I actually do have a lot of people on well water when they talk to me at the trade shows. I'm like, hey, I don't have to pay for water. And I say, okay, I understand that. And I appreciate that. And there's a couple things that we do from a value perspective is that the way that this is designed, it's all metal. I guess I almost market myself out of additional sales from the same people because the idea on this shower head is it's a one and done. Is that when you buy this shower head, it will last you a very, very long time. And it is not designed to break down. It's a core metal. And so it won't degrade. It's a simple clean to get it back up and running. If you have any type of calcification or hard water to build up on there, I cannot prevent that. I don't think there's very many shower heads that can. And so my thinking is, and my value proposition is that when you buy it once, it'll last you for years and years and years and years. The other shower heads may be cheaper, but you're going to be replacing those more often. And so as you replace, go back into the landfill, which then fills up the landfills. So that's one of our value proposition. Additionally, with the anodization process, I'm able to take this exact same shower head 3 or 4 years down the road. I can bring it back in-house. I can remove the anodization, that color. I can reapply another color of anodization on there and send it back out to you. You don't have to go out and make anything else anymore. It's just truly an anodization process. I can do that up to 3 times. And so if you figure out the cycle of how often the colors change inside of bathrooms and whatnot, that could possibly be 5, 10, 15 years down the road. You could be using the exact same shower head today, or that you would be using 15 years down the road. At the end of that cycle, if I anodize it 3 times, I would then have to recycle it. But it's a 100% recyclable shower head. So I just go back in, I melt it, start a new bar of material, make it again. And so mine is more longer term thinking, is that you buy it now, but it will pay itself off, especially if everybody's honest and they're saying, yeah, I'm probably replacing shower heads maybe once every year and a half or something like that. This one is not something you have to do that with. You would just literally clean it, and it's simple cleaning. I mean, vinegar and water is as simple as it is. I've been using one for 3 years now. I've cleaned it once and it still functions and performs the exact same as when it was straight out of the box. And honestly, I put it on the table next to all the brand new ones and I show everybody, tell me which one's different and I'll give you a brand new one. And I still have that brand new one still sitting in the box. Nobody's been able to tell me the difference between a 3-year-old one and a brand new one. That's coming right out of them.
That's cool. Good. What about the water side of things? Is there anything other than just being ecology conscious, in terms of cost? I mean, obviously, if you're paying for water, I mean, I don't know what the numbers look like. And then maybe you can get into the cost. I also don't have a feel for, like, I haven't bought a shower head since we restored our house 23 years ago. But we're not a B&B. And so it's not like, we're using it that much. Although you're right about the calcifying or whatever happens with buildup and that sort of thing. I'm starting to see that. But yeah, talk about those numbers, if you would, as well as, I don't know what the average cost is. So if yours is $100 and the average one's 40 and yours is going to last, at least 3 years, 5 years, and the others are crapping out after 1 or 2, then yeah, certainly if I'm going to be in business for a while, then it seems like a better way to go. So yeah.
Yeah, the better way, honestly, the biggest sale is those who are on city water. They see a tremendous savings straight off the bat by using this. I actually bring with me, and I asked the customer if I could do it. I bring with me their specific water bill for 1 month. They bought 75% of their property because they wanted to try it out and make sure it worked. And I said, hey, we'll probably get about 25% water savings is what I'm expecting based upon what you're telling me is going on at your property. So 1 year ago, the previous year to this year, exact same occupancy rate, that small, and there's only 15 rooms. That's all they settled on was 15 rooms. They saved nearly $450. And that was in a 1 month deal. So what I look at is return on investment based on the water usage. I have come up with a tool that I show everybody on if you plug in your water rates, what if you are or are not using those water restrictors. I'll be honest with you, Steve. Most people are telling me when I get down to brass tack, what do you do when you get that new shower head before you install it? Do you stick it straight on the wall or do you go in and you rip out that restrictor plate that everybody puts in there? And almost to a person, they say, I ripped that restrictor plate out because my customers do not like a weak shower. And so now they're up to 2.5 gallons a minute. Well, I'm saving a gallon a minute of water. And that translates into savings, like an immediate saving, like in your first month. So from a cost standpoint, you get that right when you're starting to use the product. Some of these places are going through those shower head. They're saying about once every year and a half, they're replacing shower head. Depends on how much usage they have it on. And so at that point, now I'm right in the contention of, okay, you bought 2 for the same price you could have bought 1 and it lasts you for a long time. And you could have been saving water at the exact same time, which in turn translates into money in your pocket because of your water rate. A lot of people on wells, even more, Steve, they're telling me that the well water, the sewage is now being monitored. And so their disposal of the well water is now being taxed or charged. Wow. So I'm starting to see more and more of that.
That's another point, though, because we're on well water and we've got septic, and septic could be an issue, even if, because, I mean, it dilutes things and it's just, if there's too much liquid, it's got to go somewhere. So,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So even if you own a well, it does make sense to try to restrict the amount of water you're putting into your septic system, I would think.
Oh, yeah. You could outrun your septic system pretty quick. And really get into
expensive too.
That gets very, very expensive.
Yeah, like your 10,000 is nothing off the bat, right? So
absolutely. And then the other thing on wells is, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're running through a lot of water, you got to get that water out of the ground somehow. And depending on how deep that well is, you may have a pretty good sized motor on there, and so you're charging a lot of energy to draw that out of the ground. Now, I'm not sure if it's pennies on the dollar comparison. I haven't seen anybody that's done the math on that for me, but that is something to also take account, that well is working, that motor is working a lot harder, and it would not have to work as hard.
Talk about pricing as well as guarantee. Do you have some type of guarantee so that if they're going to pay a lot of money or more money, for your product versus the average, that they feel like that, the assumption that it's going to last for a long time, they can rely on that, because if not, they would let you know and say, hey, need a replacement or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a full 30-day warranty on the refund. So if you try it out and 30 or it doesn't match the colors or whatnot, you can bring it back for 30 days. That's inside of our system, and that's on the when you purchase the product. As far as the warranty goes, as far as manufacturable warranties, we're expecting that to last 10 years. And so at least a 10-year warranty. I'm trying to see if I can push that up. I'm going through some, and there I'm going to nerd out a little bit, but in the aerospace world, we have a highly accelerated life test. It's called a HALT test, but it basically simulates a high corrosion environment. And it simulates about 20 years of that. And it's still going through the process of that testing right now. And when I get those tests back, then the results back from that test, I can possibly even extend it out further.
Okay, cool. And cost wise, you got a couple different models, right?
Yes, sir. So one of the models, the EcoJet Stream, that's running at $99.99 right now. And the Desert Willow, we're looking at an introductory price, the retail price of $189.99 on that.
And you sell online, but is there any kind of discount online? Or if I have 15 rooms, do I need to contact you and say, hey, Craig, I'm thinking about this, but would like,
yes, we would.
What can you do for me?
Yeah, absolutely. We would always entertain bulk orders, and there'd be bulk order discounts. Yes, sir. Okay. And so what I would encourage companies to do, or properties to do, is to reach out to me. My goal is really to save water and save resources. And so that's my main goal. And so, and keep these companies afloat.
And you've been,
I'm really working with them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So how long have you actually been actively marketing this now?
We've actively been marketing this for about 1 year. Well, I mean, hardcore with marketing, it started in October of last year. So we're right at 1 year, just a little over 1 year. We hit the digital marketing real hard, try to do an online presence on that. We didn't see a lot of conversions initially because it's always like that first domino. You're waiting on the product reviews to come in. And so a lot of people just don't buy. The one thing the digital marketing guy said, they've never seen anybody's webpage where all the videos were watched 100% all the way through every time. They had a 100% capture rate on all videos. So people were extremely interested in the product. It just had no reviews at the time.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. And so just out of curiosity, are you still consulting, or did you quit your other day job, which was not a job? And are you focused on this full time? Or are you in transition and hoping that, you're, it's the Holy Grail or what?
So Steve, what I'm really looking for is a longer candle, because I got both ends burning and then burning it in the middle at this time. So I'm looking for a longer candle. No, actually, I'm kind of doing some transitioning out of the consulting. I have been able to bring on additional people to pick up the client load in that area, which has been very, very helpful. So I'm able to continue that on. We are 100% self-funded. And so as such, we still need some of that revenue coming in to self-fund the Samson expansion. But my goal is 2024 to be able to transition over, to be able to run it. There's a lot of things that I really do believe, Steve, when that first domino falls, it's going to go with just the sheer amount of interest. One show, we had 6 people selling, and we had 5 people deep, every single salesperson for 8 hours.
Wow.
And so it's a very huge amount of interest. I just need that first domino to fall.
What about Craig, Shark Tank?
Shark Tank, right. And Craig, so something that might help you is that,
yes, sir.
I mean, goodness, just read the news, step outside on a winter day or a summer day. Climate change is happening, man. And I think we're at the point where people are going to realize, like, we all have to do our part on this, whether it's changing our shower heads, recycling more, whatever it may be. Humanity needs to shift. So you're also, I assume, thinking along those lines too.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually in discussions right now with a nonprofit, and hopefully at the beginning of 2024, we were supposed to launch third, fourth quarter this year, but it got pushed a couple months. So probably first quarter next year is a huge event, or a huge activity going to occur related to climate change and our carbon footprint. And so very excited about that, but absolutely.
In some ways, your story parallels or is similar to ours to a degree, because, my main company, could call it consulting, but we build things. We don't just tell you what to do. We actually do them, But no, we do custom web content management solution type stuff, right? For corporate clients. And we bootstrapped the Frictionless Guest app. And yeah, similar kind of a thing where, and it would be great if it's successful, but our mission is really more about, I would say, just like yours is to preserve water, ours is kind of preservation of unique and especially historic kinds of areas and places. That's really our mission because, and it came about from a love of, like my old money pit house that I'm sitting in that you can see here. And my wife and I, our love of old places and doing B&Bs for 30 plus years. It's like, and going to really cool destinations. The app is all about trying to connect people to those places and having the innkeepers and the independent lodging people out there who live in those communities and, to basically try to preserve them. So it's a similar kind of mission, or it feels very similar. So I hope you really get it going and are able to be really successful. Looking forward to seeing you at ALP, and I think
yes, sir.
Very early March, I believe, right? This year?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And we'll get some podcasts going on that with the ALP folks, I'm sure. But yeah, no, that's really cool. Matt, I think it's your turn. Sorry, you were starting to say something, weren't you, Matt?
No. Well, I was going to say that I have been in touch with Eric Spence, so more to come on our ALP podcast.
Okay.
Talk about later, but yeah.
And I forgot there's one more thing that parallels Craig's story about us, and that is you named the company after your grandfather. And I could say that with all the friction that Matt has given me over the years, and our relationship predates Frictionless, okay? That's maybe that's how I didn't realize it, but that's why we named the app that.
That was the inspiration. Yes.
All right.
Oh, that's
all right, Matt. All right.
Great.
That's hilarious.
Get us out of here, right?
I love it. You can sass me anytime, brother. That's funny. So, Craig, great podcast.
Sure.
And my last question is always like, anything else to add or anything we may have missed before I take us out?
No, I just appreciate y'all having me on here and being able to tell my story and just get the name recognition out there and have everybody understand that you do not have to compromise on saving water and still getting a good shower, both for you and your guests. Everybody will appreciate it. So thank you both for having me on here.
Yeah, perfect.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. This concludes this Frictionless Innkeeper podcast interview with Craig Steele, who's the president and CEO of Samson Shower Systems, which offers money and water-saving, high-pressure, low-flow shower heads for the independent lodging sector. Our podcast is brought to you by the Frictionless Guest App, the digital concierge that helps your guests to live like locals. Learn how at frictionlessguest.com. Once again, that's frictionlessguest.com. Craig, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, sir.
Steve Short, always a pleasure.
You're a gentleman, Matt. Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it.
Thank you.